Welcome back to Full Circle. I'm Hillary Doyle. When it comes to loyalty, Canadians are a cut above. As a nation, we have the largest population of loyalty program subscribers in the world. Over 95% of Canadians are enrolled in a loyalty program, and yet only 25% are considered leaders in the space. When it comes to commitment, there is only one thing deeper and more emotionally compelling than loyalty, and that is fandom. It keeps customers invested over decades and across generations. And who builds fandom better than anyone? Sports. Fans show up for their teams through hail, through rain, through locusts and losing seasons. Globally, they spend about $34 billion showing up on game days. They shell out over $7 billion on merchandise, and they throw down approximately $27 billion a year on fantasy leagues. So our question is, how can organizations build this kind of loyalty with their own customer base? And to give us their 110%, I am joined by two people who think about fandom every day. Jeff Harris is a partner in Deloitte's strategy, risk, and transactions practice. He is the founder of our sports business advisory practice in Canada, and he leads Deloitte's national sports and live entertainment sector. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Hillary. It's a pleasure to be here, and it fought locusts on the way as well. So
I'm glad you made
yeah,
it safely in. So did Robert Hayes. Robert Hayes is president and CEO of Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation, the organization behind several of Calgary's most beloved pro sports teams, including, of course, the Calgary Flames. Robert oversees operations, strategy, and fan experience across the portfolio. Welcome, Robert. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you, Hillary. I didn't fight locusts, but I did fight the odd snowstorm that hit today.
I know that's Calgary in spring. You are the CEO of a massive sports organization, but first you were a fan. So I want to start by hearing your origin story. Can you point to a moment that really moved you from a sports spectator to a diehard fan?
I can. I think back to when I was a young boy growing up in Halifax on the East Coast, and we received Hockey Night in Canada a couple times a week, but Wednesday nights it was on too late, so I wasn't allowed to stay up. But Saturday nights I would watch Hockey Night in Canada and enjoy the games, and was, I would say, a general fan. But I vividly remember the one night that the Toronto Maple Leafs were playing the Boston Bruins, and Daryl Sittler scored 10 points, which is a record that still stands today. And it was just so fun to watch and see the excitement of all the people who were there, and then talk the next day to friends who had seen the game as well, because it was a Saturday, as I say. And that really hooked me on hockey, I would say specifically, but sports in general, that there's a lot of really cool things that happen in the sporting environment. So that was the first time that I really got hooked.
I'm curious how your organization, Robert, thinks about turning these kinds of moments like the Sittler 10-point game into fan building business opportunities.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. There's a real intersection between sports and entertainment and the business side. I just spoke to a group of people recently. I was looking up some stats, and Jeff would know this, but it's $2.3 trillion is the economic impact of sports and entertainment right now, heading towards $3 billion. We obviously want to tap into that because we are a business that wants to continue to grow. But from a sports perspective, how are we going to do that? And you alluded earlier to the number of loyalty programs that are out in the marketplace today. We just launched a loyalty program because we believe that's very, very important from our fan base perspective. And we want to make experiences happen for them. And that's how we're trying to drive fandom. We want everybody and anybody who wants to come see a sporting event, but we want to turn it into an experience for them. I always joke the perfect world is you go home, and whether we win or lose, you're not necessarily paying attention to that because you had such an incredible experience at that particular event. I met a player, I met an alumni. Something was going on that night from an activation perspective that I wasn't expecting. And it really was a tremendous opportunity for me and my spouse, my child, my buddies, whoever it was, to walk away just wowed. And that's what we're trying to do. Game in and game out is wow people.
It's this emotional element that that sports is able to tap into and that business is envious of. And Jeff, you've studied it for 10 years. Can you talk a little bit about the business implication of that shift, what you've seen from your own perspective?
For sure. I would say, from our perspective, Hillary, there's, I'll say three defining characteristics that we look for to say, like, is fandom present? And that would be, community, longevity, and passion. But to understand if fandom is driving value, because it's one thing to come together, but are you leaning in? Are you engaged? Right? Are you acting on that sense of togetherness and that sense of identity? I mean, sometimes we call it irrational loyalty. You talked about the statistic around like Canadians, we're want to sign up for loyalty programs, but there's a lot of time where we just kind of sit dormant or let points collect. We want to see that like active loyalty, and are they acting on their passion? Are you spending? Right? Because there's like the fandom and the transition to customer. Are organizations capturing that value? And ultimately, the power of fandom is when logic no longer governs the relationship that you may have with a property or brand. It's when identity does.
I mean, what I'm hearing you say is fandom doesn't need to happen organically. It can be designed for, it can be built. And so, there is a direct application here for business at large.
So I agree. You cannot like manufacture emotion, but you can definitely design the conditions for it. Firm believer in that. And believe too in a world where like our sports organizations, right, they're not just competing against each other for share of wallet, other entertainment mediums. They're competing with time and attention. I firmly believe that people still place a lot of value on stability and anchors in our life, right, and consistency. And from a sports perspective, from a fandom perspective, there is something to be said about the consistency that sport has in our lives. And if you think about your first game, your first catch, your first hoop, first time that you put on a pair of skates, high likelihood that it was somebody who means something to you personally, who had a major impact on your life. So again, it's not like a nostalgia, anchor, just like sense of like stability and comfort as well too. That fandom provides that again, I think has even increasing a amount of value in this like increasingly fragmented world that we live in.
I want to come back to this fragmentation. I hear Jeff talking about the nostalgia of sport. And Robert, obviously, you need to balance nostalgia and the present day. We are in an era of hyper personalization. That's what customers now expect through their full life cycle as a consumer. Walk us through how CSEC is thinking about and catering to the life cycle of an average fan in 2026.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And when I look back, when I was probably a kid, I followed the team, I would say a lot more than I did necessarily individual players. There were star players and you kind of followed them. But today, I think it's more where players have done a great job at amplifying their own brand, if you will, within the sport that they play. And there were some wonderful statistics that were shared by some of the NHL folks when I was last speaking with them. And it was around just that when certain players get traded to other teams, all of a sudden some of those fans are transferring across to follow the players, not necessarily the new team, but the player themselves. So we have to figure out, I think, as a sports organization, how we can leverage the players we have so that we can be a combination of our brand and their brand, because I think it's great for them to do what they're doing. And how can we do that? Again, I'll put the business lens on it from a monetization perspective. What's the opportunity for us? What's the opportunity for the player? Is there a chance that we can collaborate and work together in some of these sorts of things? So I do think it's really changed and morphed over time. That's for sure.
We obviously cannot have this discussion about hockey without at least mentioning heated rivalry. And so, in the context of trading players, how do rivalries drive the economic and marketing decisions that an organization like yours is making?
Well, it wasn't that many years ago. There had never been a trade between the Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames. So how's that for heated rivalry from a Battle of Alberta perspective? And I cannot recall who the first player was, but that was broken at one point in time. But that's probably the best rivalry to talk about. There's the other side of the coin, though, and it's a pure collaboration. So I take the World Cup hockey, that the World Cup of Hockey 2028, which we're so proud to have landed for the North American site here in Alberta.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And that was a joint effort that, you asked Jeff earlier about, can something be manufactured? Can something be organically put together? And I like to think that was a little combination of both, because we were both going down the path of putting our individual bids in. And as I've said publicly, somewhere along the way, we kind of said, well, doesn't it make sense to do this from a provincial perspective? And we talked to the people at the province, we talked to the folks in our respective cities, and we talked to our individual organizations, and we put it together. So at some point in time, you have to put that rivalry together, because it's better for the business overall. In this case, it's good for the business, but it's great for the hockey fans in Canada, because it's going to be an amazing experience in 2028.
Obviously, fandom benefits and expands through cultural moments like these. But how long lasting is the impact of an event like the World Cup of Hockey on an organization like yours?
So I'll give you the dollar economic impact is about $373 million to the province. We think the impact, though, is even greater than that in the long term from a provincial, and then selfishly from a Calgary City perspective, and Edmonton would think the same way, because we are going to have 9 or 10 days where the world who follows hockey is going to be focused on Calgary. And then a whole bunch of those people are going to come here. They're going to go to the mountains. They're going to do things from a family perspective. And that's the long-term effect, is that PR, if you will, that we get for the city, for the province of Alberta, and what it can drive from an economic perspective.
Jeff, I'll expect you to answer this in as unbiased a manner as you can muster. But looking at the spend that is required to build loyalty, do sports partnerships and really seizing on these mass sporting moments tend to offer the greatest ROI for any business marketing team?
So I'll answer that in a few ways, Hillary. Companies who get, loyalty right and who deliver that hyper personalization that both you and Robert alluded to earlier, have 2.5 greater revenue growth than those who don't get it right. And I think is what that also shows, like on this fandom and this sport partnership side, is like, how do you kind of thread that needle, right, of community, shared experiences, the identity that comes with being in a group, versus this like hyper personalized world that we all live in and expect. And I think is, what Robert and his team are doing are a lovely job of threading that needle, right? They branded that sense of belonging, right? You're in the sea of red, right? That is the big, capital B, big Calgary Flames fandom that they branded. But Club Red is that avenue where they can deliver, right, that hyper personalized content, experiences, gamification that would help me as a consumer, as a fan, feel valued, while at the same time, Robert and his team members, they're building zero party data, first party data asset, right, that they can use to continually invest in the customer relationship and better service that customer, and of course monetize that. But to your point on the marketing and brand side, right, that's data that can be shared through to corporate partners, kind of whether it be, from a clean room perspective, whether that be from specific in selling specific partnerships or branded content within the asset, different branded programs within the loyalty program, what have you. It's just presents some very unique opportunities. And that's why really, we would advise clients to make sure that they are leaning in on the opportunities for that zero party, first party data collection, and really to build it as that asset.
Robert, talk to us about how you maintain engagement in a program like Club Red.
So it starts exactly with what Jeff is describing. It's the data capture. How can we collect data throughout the process so that we can ultimately service that fan better? They come to the stadium, they have that amazing experience, and we in turn collect data so that the next time they come to the stadium, we can then be more proactive in some of the things that we are looking to do from an interaction perspective with them. And yes, it helps to monetize from that point of view as well. What can we do to help excite that individual outside of the hockey? What can we do from a marketing, from a promotion perspective? How can we get them talking to their friends and family about the interactions that they've had with Calgary Flames?
Can you give us an understanding of specifics when it comes to the data points you're tracking and looking for in terms of understanding where someone sits on that trajectory from spectator to diehard fan?
So it starts with just collecting hard data to start with. How do you identify as an individual? What is your demographic from an age perspective? If they'll share it, what is your demographic? Obviously, from an income perspective, all those sorts of things. Then I think you want to start to peel back the layers. And I'll use my kids as an example. I have two kids who are relatively passive sports fans. They're not nearly as engaged as their dad is. Hurts me, but
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, painful.
we want to figure out how can we get them to engage with Calgary sports and entertainment comes to games. So in my case, it's my two daughters, and we've gone the fashion route. They're probably pretty homogeneous relative to others that are out there in that demographic. What can we do from a retail perspective, from a fashion perspective? Who can we work with? So trying to bring in the collaborations, which takes you back to our sponsors, and what can we do with our sponsors to better them from a business perspective, and it's going to better us at the same time, create a better fan experience. It has to start, in my opinion, with loyalty, and loyalty, I think, is built, probably organically. Maybe you can manufacture a little of it, as Jeff talked about a little earlier, but it happens over time. And the best loyalty I think that you can have is when there's some bumpiness along the way. So in the business side, not every business is a straight line going up from a revenue profitability perspective. We know there's going to be bumps along the way. So what can you do when you're engaging with those businesses, if you're a partner of some sort, to help them? And that helps create loyalty. And on the business side of hockey, or on the hockey side of hockey, I should say, it's the same sort of thing. We're going through a bumpy patch right now. If you would have been in the stadium last night, you'd never have known that. We're going to be really hard pressed, never say never, but really hard pressed to make the playoffs. So it'd be a lot easier for people to mail it in, but they're cheering. And I think that's all that we have built up in the past from a loyalty perspective.
You asked about like what can businesses, I'll say, like, outside of sport, learn from sport. Sport in particular used to be organized as regional ticketing and sponsorship organizations. Right? That's changed. Sports organizations, they compete globally for capital, for partners and fans. And to win in the business of sport, they've needed to evolve to successfully operate at the confluence of technology, data, and content to win with these next generations of customers. So the evolution of the business model of sport, and how it's gone from that legacy regional ticketing sponsorship body to being these global enterprises and a fundamentally different business model, I think is one takeaway. The second is on the culture aspect. Is the way the legacy used to rely on fans was on like participation, right? That was your production pipeline for fans. I mean, that's no longer the case now. Is culture can very much be how individuals and communities like discover, consume, and engage with sport. It's the gateway now. So it is being intentional, to Robert's point, on like who are some of the organizations that you want to partner with to help to facilitate those entry points and awareness of your product, of the experience that you're going to provide for those fans, and how can, I'll say, those cultural partners that you're building relationships with, how can they help not just with the celebrity crossovers, how can they help with the storytelling, with the community participation? I mean, in some aspects, right, there's a full flattening of the relationship, and your fans are now co-creators and like partners in your business, right? And they are out there telling your story in an authentic manner to different fan communities. So that would be kind of the other aspect is one kind of was the business model shift and just competing in a new reality.
Hmm. When you consider that the whole world are now your ambassador, and obviously we're living in an era of fragmentation across platforms, it's hindering a lot of businesses. But for you, Robert, I'm curious whether fragmentation is actually helping your business and how.
I would say it does, from the perspective that we're an organization that we have 5 different teams. And so we are able to look at the data and say, what is the best fit for the particular client fan that we have coming to interact with us in some way, shape, or form. 5 teams plus live entertainment, because some aren't interested in sports. They like the live entertainment. But we do that from a price point perspective, from an action perspective. So the the average client that we have, fan that we have coming to see the Calgary Roughnecks, which is our lacrosse team, and our motto is, come for the game, stay for the party. It's a party-like atmosphere. You come and we score a goal, and the entire stadium of 15,000 people breaks out into a chant that if you're there for the first time, you don't understand what's going on. But by the time we score a third or fourth goal, you're doing the chant as well because you bought into it. That's probably a different client that is coming to a Calgary Flames game, and a different client that wants to see those young players come up in junior hockey, and a different client that says, I want to go to the CFL because I love Canadian football. I'm very, very passionate about doing that. So that's part of the data analysis that we're doing and trying to figure out what we can do to create an experience for those fans to come to the different things that they want to from that fragmentation perspective. But then we want to go even further and say, okay, how could we convince you to maybe try something new in an area where perhaps in the past you didn't want to try? And that's that whole data and experience and just test and learn as you go.
I'm wondering what leaders in other industries outside of sport are still underestimating when it comes to building a kind of enduring loyalty or fandom.
I think still what businesses, in my humble opinion, do not do enough of is listen to the client, listen to the consumer, listen to the customer. And we get so focused on this is the greatest thing, the greatest widget, the greatest whatever that we've created. If we build it, if we do it from a service perspective, they will come. And we're disappointed when, oh gosh, that didn't quite work out as well as we think. And we have to step back and say, great idea. Let's go out and test it a little bit and make sure it really is a great idea. And perhaps it is, but I like to say, how do you take great and make it even better? What's the next step up? And I'm just convinced that anytime you listen to customers, clients, fans, it's a good thing because they'll give you some valuable feedback and you can improve your business and ultimately improve the experience with them and build that loyalty.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about, right, they create these moments, right? These moments that matter, these shared experiences, right? It's the moments that matter for your customers, right? It's the shared experience insofar as how your customers define. Don't just treat customers, right, as like a buyer of something useful, but have them feel that, they're a member, they're part of a community of something bigger. We know there are some near-term targets that we all have, but is also just have to kind of resist the urge and to over optimize on, right, conversion, short-term benefits, and under investing in belonging, right? And the immediate getting in the way of the necessary. So parting advice would be don't underinvest in the belonging, kind of, which is that long-term view.
To close out, I'm curious, any business that's looking to shift their narrative right now and build towards a winning one, what's a piece of advice that you would take?
From a client perspective, so are we envisioning this as a business that has been, a little bit down on its luck, if you will?
I mean, maybe a business that's thinking it might not make the playoffs this year, Robert.
Okay, from that perspective,
Yeah.
we what I would go to automatically is you have to have a plan. What's the plan for the future? And you have to share that plan, in our case, with the fans. And I think our plan is pretty straightforward, that we're having a tough time right now on the Calgary Flames, but we have a lot of really great young players who are excited to be here, who want to grow. We have a city who right now is a little forgiving of the fact that we're not playing as well as everybody would love to see us play because they do see a future. So as long as we have a plan and we have a future, I think we can anticipate that those fans are going to continue to be patient to a point. A point is, I don't know what the time duration is of that, but there is a duration of some sort, and they want to see progress. If you set a plan, you want to see progress.
And so the takeaway I'm hearing is for business at large, you can really build loyalty through vulnerability. Is that a fair takeaway?
Yeah, I think that's a fair takeaway. Yes.
If a CEO is looking to start measuring fandom tomorrow, not just customer satisfaction, which signals should they be looking for? Which data points would you recommend are best to start tracking?
The four bases that we look at, Hillary, are fan engagement, cultural relevance, extensibility, and audience value. So on the engagement side, look for search trends, organic social engagement. On cultural relevance, there's different ways, like through uh, listening to your customer, you can get fan sentiment. What are the different, partnerships that you have? What are some of the different communities that are engaging with your product or your brand? Are you starting to be like relevant from a cultural standpoint? Extensibility, not just the kind of like the breadth, but also like the depth of different, I'll say like revenue streams. So, look to what is the ability of a franchise, a sports franchise or another brand in the marketplace to extend that experience through some of these adjacent opportunities. We're looking to, create certain experiences with X. We're looking to partner with Y. We're looking to launch Z platform. Is measuring revenue lift that you've gotten from brand extensions beyond core offering. And the last one on audience value is if you look at your fans like as a portfolio, right? You'll have different segments of fans that you look to service. Are you starting to see growth in some of your fan segments? So this is a bit of a lag indicator on that, but kind of if you're getting engagement right, if you're getting cultural relevance right, and if you're getting kind of that brand extension right, should be starting to see metrics on customer segment, addressable market start to move upwards. If you're not, then you're probably measuring the wrong things on the first three.
Robert Hayes, Jeff Harris, thank you both for leaving it all on the field.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Hillary. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it.
Here are the takeaways. We know that sport builds belonging better than anyone. And if you take Robert's word for it, when it's built right, this sense of belonging grows even stronger when you lose. For a season, anyway. Reports suggest that the majority of Gen Zs are more interested at this point in the cultural moments around a sport than they are in the outcome of the sport itself. And the broad business takeaway here is respond to the culture or find ways to become it. Global ownership groups have gotten very creative about this by connecting media, sport, video games, content studios, data companies, and real estate to ensure that their core brands remain visible, relevant, and amplified all year round. Thanks again to Robert Hayes and Jeff Harris. Thanks especially to you for listening. You can reach us anytime at circleback@deloitte.ca. And please follow, like, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.